Hi, I'm Femi Oke, and you're in the stream. Today, locked up for love. A new Nigerian law punishes gay people and their supporters with years in prison. Some are celebrating, others are scared for their safety. Both join our conversation. So we have an impressive lineup of guests coming up on this show, but the impressive conversation is not just on the show, also online. Digital producer Malika Bilal, right?
Right, and that's where it's really the most vibrant and dynamic. We'll see what happens in the next 30 minutes.
Right.
So far we've gotten 1,400 comments, more than 1,400 comments on Facebook, and a Facebook post alone. Several more on Google+.
How does that compare to a normal show?
Normally we get hundreds.
Okay.
1,400 is a lot.
Wow, okay.
And that's just on Facebook. There's also Google+, and on Twitter, it's simply overwhelming. So I want to show this on my screen is a map in real time of all of you at home who are tweeting us with AJ Stream right now. I plan to bring as many of your tweets into today's show. But of course, I need you to keep them coming. So use hashtag AJ Stream. So Malika and our stream team, they are plugged into what's trending right now online. So if you're tweeting, we're watching, we're waiting. And here are some of the hashtags we're already seeing trending from Nigeria on gay rights. Stone-throwing mobs pelted 7 men on trial for allegedly being gay in northern Nigeria this week. The attack at Bauchi's Islamic Court is a violent reminder of new restrictions on gay people recently signed into law by President Goodluck Jonathan. Under the new law, those who witness or help gay meetings or groups could spend a decade behind bars. The law also bans same-sex marriages, handing out prison terms of up to 14 years to offenders. Sodomy is already outlawed in Nigeria, so what's motivating this new legislation and what impact will it have on Nigeria and the surrounding region? To help us talk about this, Reuben Abati is spokesman for the Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan. He's with us from Davos, where he's travelling with the President. Joining us from London, we have rights advocate Bisi Alimi. He is the first Nigerian to publicly come out as gay on Nigerian national television. From Kaduna, Nigeria, we have Reverend Musa Asake. He is General Secretary of the Christian Association of Nigeria. And in Lagos, Rashidi Williams is a human rights activist. So gentlemen, it is great to have you all here in the stream as part of this conversation. Let's get it going though with Reuben. Reuben, what's happened with President Jonathan actually signing this legislation is a huge global conversation. Where's the controversy as far as you're concerned?
Well, the controversy is interesting, but the thing that should be noted is that after President Jonathan signed that bill into law on January 7 this year, he has received enormous praise and a lot of applause from different sections of the Nigerian society. Both religious groups, community groups, traditional rulers, even young persons have praised President Jonathan for taking this step, to the extent that this particular law is a reflection of the religious and cultural preferences of the Nigerian people, and it is also a product of a democratic process in Nigeria. So it is to be seen in terms of the democratic reality in Nigeria. It's not as if the government just woke up and the president signed the law. It is in fact a private member's bill, and the gentleman who sponsored the bill, one Senator Domingo Obebe, has in fact been going around defending it. And when he proposed the bill originally in 2011, it was supported by 25 other senators drawn from different political parties. And the law itself went through due process in terms of hearings, in terms of receiving memoranda from the Nigerian people, so that at the end of the day, what you have is a law supported by the majority of Nigerian people, a law in which the people have expressed confidence, a law in which inside Nigeria, inside Nigeria there is no controversy in terms of its acceptance.
All right, so we're seeing that this legislation just scrolling on our screens right now. Bissy, when you heard about this legislation being signed into law, your reaction?
Well, my reaction was that of a huge shock. And it's interesting to listen to Abati speaking on behalf of Nigerians. It shows how diligent you are with your work, Mr. Ruben. And I'm really proud of the legacy that you are leaving behind for the younger generations to follow. You talk about democratic process. The Nigerian Constitution opened with "We, the people of Nigeria." And in that, there was no mention of or classification of who should be a Nigerian and who shouldn't be a Nigerian. The Constitution recognized everybody as a citizen of Nigeria, including the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans people. You talk about this law being something that Nigerians clamored for. Nobody in Nigeria, there was never a time in Nigeria that we as Nigerians demanded or mandated our lawmakers to go into the House to actually pass a law that would criminalize a section of the community. And that said, you talk about democracy. In democracy, the rule of law is to protect the minority. The rule of law was never put into place to criminalize the vulnerable. What this law is doing is to set in place a motion to criminalize a section of Nigeria who the Constitution recognizes as being fundamental to the setting or the structure of the country called the Federal Republic of Nigeria. You, your boss, and the lawmakers are actually committing a huge crime, a huge human rights crime by going against the Nigerian Constitution. If there is a need for this law to happen, let us have a public conversation about it, which means we have to completely ignore the 1999 Constitution, have a constitutional conference that will specifically change the Constitution and state categorically that LGBT people in Nigeria are less human, and on that basis we will have a constitution that would criminalize them.
All right, BC,
because
Femi, if you allow me, I would like to respond very quickly to BC.
Go ahead, and then we're going to go to our community because they're eager to join in too. Go ahead.
And it is to say that indeed, the process leading to this particular legislation was a very open one. And I would like to draw BC's attention to the fact that between 2007 and 2011, attempts were made by the parliament to pass this particular piece of legislation into law. But the parliament that was there before 2011 did not end up doing so. And then in 2011, the Senate voted unanimously for this law, having conducted open hearings, having listened to the Nigerian people, and in 2013, the House of Reps followed suit.
All right, so Ruben, take a breath here, because I don't want to take our international audience through the workings of the Senate in Nigeria. But I do want to get the conversation.
Let me complete the thought.
Femi, I think it's important that Ruben highlight what Ruben is trying to say, because Ruben talked about democracy, and it will be interesting for the people watching to understand what democracy means to the likes of Ruben, the senators and the House of Reps, and even the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Ruben,
what is democracy to you?
Let me finish.
I'd like to come in
now,
here.
The other thing I was going to say is that there is nothing extraordinarily new about this law, other than that it codifies extant laws. Section 214, 215 of the Criminal Code, Section 284 and 405 of the Penal Code, existing.
So this is exactly where I'm going to stop you, Ruben. We're not going to go through the penal court here. Okay, so Rashidi, I hear you. Hold on one moment. Be patient for me for a second. I need to get the community in as well. We had thousands of responses. I need to get some of them into this conversation.
Definitely. And of course, it's an international discussion, but of course, we are hearing from Nigerians. And so I just want to give a little taste of what some of them are telling us. Isaiku says, it is the most acceptable decision to all Nigerians ever taken by our government. We welcome it wholeheartedly. Basically echoing what Ruben said, another person writes in, it's only fair for the world to know that 80% of Nigerians support this law. law, and that is what true democracy is about. But Rashidi, I want to go to you with this next one. Ali B writes in, Nigeria's anti-gay law will increase mob actions. Just accuse someone of homosexuality and the mob will take laws into their hand. And we heard earlier, Femi mentioned, as we started the show, the mob action that we already saw happen in Bauchi yesterday. So what does it look like on the ground in Nigeria?
I think the situation on the ground in Nigeria right now is very tense. The passage of the bill into law have heightened fears in our community. It has jeopardized the safety and security, and in the lead to safety and security that LGBT people in this country enjoy, in time past. And our fears have been heightened. People have gone underground. People have been silenced. We hear about arrests every now and then. And it's also good to take on Abati that when this bill was, in the process of becoming law, we were at Parliament, and Parliament never gave us a chance to speak our mind. It only gave a chance to religious folks in this country to air their minds. It is not only religious people that own Nigeria or live in Nigeria. There are people of secular minds that were at Parliament and were never given a chance to air their minds on the heinous of this law. Right now in Nigeria, people are afraid. LGBT people are afraid. Not just LGBT people, but people who are perceived as LGBT people are also afraid of their lives. The law is not just catching up on people who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or trans people. It is also catching up on people whom society perceives to be lesbian, gay, bisexual, or trans people. And that is where the problem is. The president, just gave a license to violence. And I don't think that is anything, near democracy. And that we should be saying that, it reflected what Nigerians want. This bill does, or this law rather, does not reflect what we as Nigerians want. This is not what we want. In as much as we do not, resonate on the concept of homosexuality, we do not resonate also on violence, and we should not, be exposing our own citizens to violence on the fact that we do not understand them. That is what they've done to us in this country. They've exposed us to violence. You see what is going on in Bauchi. People are being arrested anyhow. People are being detained unlawfully, and people are charging them almost 50,000 naira for bail. 9 people being arrested, and you're charging 50,000 naira for bail. That is close to $3,000. That is going to escalate the problem of corruption in this country. That is what we are talking about. It is going to increase violence, and it's going to aid corruption. That is what we are talking about. The president of the country is supposed to protect the minority in his country. The president has failed in his duty as a president. He has listened to only religious people. He has not listened to the Constitution of Nigeria that guarantees and protects the fundamental human rights of all Nigerians, irrespective of sexual orientation or gender identity. There is no place in the Constitution that says you are Nigerian because you are heterosexual. Nigeria is not meant, for heterosexual people alone. There are homosexual people in this country, and we deserve a right. We deserve a space, not just a space. We deserve a political space in this country, and we cannot have that space by criminalizing us. There is already a law in place that criminalizes homosexuality.
I think your point is made.
Why do we need another law? Why do we want to expose people to violence when we already exposed them to violence in the past? I mean, we have not given a license.
Rashidi, would you take a breath for a moment?
Police, our police is very corrupt. We have not given them a license to take laws into their hands and, name people.
So, Rashidi, I hear you. We hear you. We have a conversation going on amongst us. You did mention the religious part of Nigeria. Nigeria is a very religious country. We have 50% Muslims and also 50% Christians as well. I should say, by the way, I am Nigerian if you hadn't already worked that out, although it's not really relevant to this conversation, just understanding the country a little bit more. But Reverend Rashidi was talking about how the religious part of Nigeria, they were very happy with this legislation. What's your take?
My take is that when I listen to him talk and saying we Nigerians, I begin to wonder who he is referring to as we Nigerians. This law has been accepted. We are so happy. Nigerians elected a president, Goodluck Jonathan, to lead us, to be our president. Nigerians spoke out against what is against their culture. Is not the normal thing. It's abnormal. So Nigerians spoke out. Our legislators, for the first time I can say, both Christians and Muslims came together. They agreed and said, we don't need this. And so they discussed it, voted on it, and it's passed into law. the president of Nigeria.
Can I ask you a question, Reverend?
Can I quickly respond to that?
Is Christianity?
One at a time. Bissy, go ahead. Rashidi, we'll come back to you.
Reverend, can I ask you a very sincere question? And I want you to look into the eyes of all 170 million Nigerians and tell us if Christianity or Islam is part of our culture.
My brother,
for that question.
Is Christianity or Islam part of our question? Part of our culture?
Okay, before I answer that question, let me also ask you a question.
No. You have to answer my question.
This is what happens when you have Nigerians on the program.
You answer my question, and I will answer your question.
All right, Bissy, hold tight.
Is Christianity or Islam part of African culture?
Correct.
Okay, now, Reverend, do you have a question for Bissy? Bissy answered your question. Go ahead.
If you go to the Bible,
no, because the Bible is a story. The Bible is a story of the Jews. The Bible is a story of the Israelites. There was never a time. There is no name.
Answering your question.
Is your surname in the Bible? Is there any Nigerian name in the Bible?
Excuse me.
Is there any Nigerian name in the Bible?
All right, Bissy, we take your point. Let the Reverend ask you a question and then we'll move on.
And I said yes.
Right,
and
so
I said yes.
Go ahead,
I was
Reverend.
going to explain more.
Okay,
Christians believe in the Bible.
I think I would also like to
have the Quran.
Back to the Reverend
If you go there,
gentlemen, I'm going to jump in here. Ruben, I hear you. I have community and they have a lot to say. I want to pick up on something that the Reverend said. The Reverend said the majority of the people in Nigeria said, we don't need this. But you know what? They're telling us some of the things they do need. Adiola writes in, we need social amenities. Why only gay? What about underage marriage, which the stream did a show on not too long ago? I think our president just wants to make noise. Another person says, I need power and good roads. I don't need government regulating personal relationships. And one more person, Black Nordic, says, Jonathan, good luck, Jonathan, the president is scrambling for a populist measure. Ruben, does that have any truth to it?
Well, this is not about populism. The issues that some of your respondents have raised about, development projects. Government is continuously dealing with those issues, either in terms of providing education.
Your government has been there for 4 years, Ruben Abati. Your government has been there for 4 years. Electricity is still a luxury in Nigeria. Good road is still a luxury in Nigeria. Good luck, Jonathan is the most.
Hello. The president has not just been there for 4 years. The president has been there doing nothing.
Okay, Rashidi and Bissy, I'm going to ask you, otherwise what happens is when you just yell over everybody, nobody hears your argument anyway. So please hold tight for a moment. Let me ask Ruben to be brief with your point. We have so many people who want to get in.
Ruben, go ahead. Not lie to Nigerians.
Please ask Bissy to stop heckling me. This is not about, President Jonathan at the end of the day. The people who sponsored this bill, they were private members in the National Assembly, okay? And they represent 170 million Nigerians. They are drawn from 36 states of the Federation and the FCT, from 6 geopolitical zones. And what we have seen is that they are expressing the wishes of the Nigerian people. Even if the president had not assented to it, the National Assembly will have overridden the veto of the president under Section 58 subsection 5 of the Constitution.
Ruben, I hear that. Let me just, Rashidi, let me ask you, and Bissy, just hold tight for a moment, just so that I can bring some clarity into this conversation. Have a look at my laptop. This is from NOI, which is the official polling authority in Nigeria. And I want you to see the president's popularity rating. So this time last year, he was at 50%. It dipped down over the period of the year, down to 40% by December. So there are some people who are saying that, but maybe this move, which is very popular for the majority of Nigerians regarding this same-sex marriage prohibition law, maybe that's to do with actually boosting the president's popularity. Rashidi, what's your take?
Femi, let me give a logic explanation to that. Let me give a logic explanation. Before December, PDP became a minority government in the National Assembly. Many governors within the PDP deflected to APC.
Yes.
There was increased terrorists from Boko Haram over the Christmas. Good luck, Jonathan was becoming a lame duck. He needed something to boost his popularity. And what he needed to do was because the religious group in Nigeria, were deceiving him to make him believe that we can stand on the pulpit every Sunday or stand in front of thousands of Muslims every Friday and tell them that the only solution to our problem is if we kill and jail the gays. They've been able to deceive the likes of Reuben Abati. Abati, I grew up respecting you because in 1993, you led us against Abacha. You led us against Babangida. You led us against Babangida. As a young man, no, it wasn't. I want you to know your legacy, and I wish that you can continue on that legacy.
This is not
you
about
led
me.
Young people like me. No, it is, because you led young people like me in the 90s against the military rule in Nigeria. Now that you are supposed to stand up for human rights, you are letting down thousands and millions of Nigerians, all because of cheap democracy, all because of chop, make I chop. Reuben, the generation of Nigerian yet unborn, will write today down in history and let you know that you let them down.
All right, gentlemen, I want to bring some more of the community into the conversation.
Can I quickly give a response? Can I quickly give a response?
Hold on one moment. I want to bring in the community. Gentlemen, we're going to carry on in the post-show, but I want to bring in some more of the community because you've had a lot of time and we are a social media show. So let's bring some social media into the conversation. Gentlemen, hold tight 1 second. Malika, I only want to hear a female voice in the next 10 seconds so that there's nobody in our guest lineup. Malika.
Thank you, Femi. Well, it's a female voice leading into this video comment from a male member of our community. I want everyone to have a listen to this.
Well, I think the president was right, you know, to sign that anti-gay bill into law, because gay acts is not our culture, you know, and I don't think it is appropriate for any country to impose their culture or, you know, what they do on other countries on the grounds of fundamental human rights. So I think it's a welcome development.
So Rashidi, in this video comment, he says it's not in African culture, but then we got this tweet from Nelson who says there's so many aspects of African culture that are wrong and yet are still practiced to this day. Religion preaches love, not discrimination. So does culture trump human rights? Human rights trump culture? Give us your take.
Well, the point is, the question has not been answered. I asked the Reverend the question. He did not answer my question. And the fact is, when you hear this argument of something is not part of our culture, then the question you ask these people is, what exactly is your understanding of our culture? And the next thing you will hear them saying is quoting the Bible and the Quran. Quran and the Bible are not part of our culture. These are slavery culture. These are cultures that were sold to us by the slave masters and the colonial masters. The same people we are accusing of teaching us homosexuality.
Gentlemen, I'm just going to ask you one at a time because we're almost at the end of the program. So actually, I'm just going to fade them all down for a moment. And I'm going to ask you, so gentlemen, I know you can hear me. We can't hear you for a moment. We're coming to the end of the program. So I have to ask you one at a time and to be courteous of each other because I can't hear any of the points you're making. They're all very strong points. So let me just go to Rashidi for a moment. Rashidi, this is your life. You're a human rights activist. You're actually out in Nigeria. So this has an impact on you. Tell me what the impact is of this latest legislation that affects your life and your work with the LGBT community in Nigeria. Just very briefly.
Yeah, I think the law has just destroyed the little work that we've been doing for our community, especially in the context of HIV prevention and treatment for men who have, for gays, bisexual, and other men who have sex with men. It has taken away our fundamental human rights in this country. It means that we cannot freely express ourselves again. We cannot associate to socialize. We cannot move freely in our own country. We can express our own opinions. We cannot even participate in the politics of our own country because we dare not say it as homosexual people. They have taken away our constitutionality as Nigerians. They have derobed us of our citizenship in our own country. They've made up fugitives in our own country. I mean, they've turned us to refugees, rather, in our own country, and this is what we are against.
All right.
And I quickly wanted to ask the Reverend...
you can't ask any more questions at this point in the program because I'm just going to wrap up and thank all of our guests. But save that question, save that thought. So if you're not watching online, I think you should find a computer and go to stream.aljazeera.com to find out what Rashidi was going to ask the Reverend, what the Reverend wanted to ask Bissy, what Reuben wanted to ask all of our guests, and maybe what you want to ask the guests as well at #AJStream. To be continued. What is the kind of reaction we're getting online, Malika?
At a moment, there's about 30 tweets per minute and counting.
Okay, I think we're breaking records right now. So stay with us. We're going online any moment now. Just time to tell you about the next show. Does the decriminalization of prostitution make sex workers safe? We'll discuss this and how the United Nations has got involved in that debate on the next AJ stream. Until then, we'll see you online. This conversation continues. Thanks for watching. Taking a sip of water, so I'm ready for part 2. Thanks for joining the Streams online post show. Today we're talking about gay rights in Nigeria. With me we have the presidential spokesman Reuben Abati, gay rights activist Bisi Alimi, Reverend Musa Asake, and human rights activist Rashidi Williams. So gentlemen, it's great to have a vibrant conversation. I know you have a lot to say. I'm going to ask you just to listen to each other. I know you're not listening to your points that you're making if you're talking over each other, because we all really want to hear the debate. It's such a critical debate. So Rashidi, we just left you at the end of that main show with a question you wanted to pose to the Reverend. Make that question brief so the Reverend can respond.
Okay. My question to the Reverend is, how does a bill that incarcerates people for 14 years make Nigeria a better society, a better country? How does it make our road motorable? How does it make our healthcare system good? You know, how does it put bread in the hands of Nigerians who doesn't have anything?
Okay, Reverend.
My brother, that you are trying to mix the whole thing. This has nothing to do with rods or putting bread on the table. It has to do with our morals. It has to do with importation of something that is foreign.
If you're saying this has to do with morals and you're sending people to 14 years in prison on the basis of morality, what is that to you?
That is to tell you that
I need to ask you another particular question. If Jesus was on earth right now, the Jesus that you're claiming to follow, what would Jesus do in a situation like this?
Hold tight. Rashidi, you really do have to listen. Otherwise, I'm just going to say you're just grandstanding. You're just asking a question. You're not expecting to hear an answer. So if you really do want to hear an answer, you have to listen. Reverend.
Femi, there's something I would like to say to Rashidi.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, he's been making this point about human rights, human rights, human rights. And I think that he's saying that because he thinks that will resonate with the international community that has been supporting, persons with this kind of views. The truth of the matter is that there's nowhere in Nigeria that you are required to state your sexual orientation. Either you are, going to school or you want to go to hospital. The law, in fact, protects everybody because the Nigerian Constitution recognizes the equality of all persons. And all the rights articulated under Chapter 4 of the Constitution applies to everybody. In this section 215 of the Criminal Code,
really? Do you think that right still holds now that you have a law that says association is banned and anyone who does association in the name of LGBT will go to prison for 14 years? Do you think that Chapter 4 of the Constitution still holds in this context?
Rashidi, you are an ABC, you are just heckling. Shouting and heckling and getting emotional.
It is not a matter of wrestling. And I also asked you a very simple question just now. What would Jesus do?
Let me come in. I've not really been allowed to speak.
Okay, I'm just going to ask for one moment of silence from all of our guests. Wow. 4 Nigerians and me trying to be neutral here in this conversation. This is not working as a conversation. You told me in the pre-show that it was a really important conversation to have, and then you could proceed to talk all over each other. I'm asking you, for our international audience who really want to understand this subject, to actually respect each other's comments. So I'm just going to stop for a moment. We're going to reset. You are going to be courteous to each other and listen. And then Malika, where are you going to take us?
BC, I want to go to you with something, picking up on something that Ruben said. He said, there is no law saying that you have to state your sexuality. And on Facebook, Kevin writes in on the back of this, he says, Nigerian gays are not even advocating for the right to get married. So why the witch hunt for them? This is taking us back to the motivations for this. If the issue of gay marriage is not something that's on the forefront of people's minds, what is the point?
Yeah, well, the point is when this started, is this question for me or for Ruben?
It's for you, BC.
Okay, when this law started, let me give you an historical background to this. This law started because three things happened. Number one was because I came out in 2004 on national television. And number two was because Reverend Jim Robinson in America was about to be ordained as the bishop of, as a bishop in America. And number three was because Mandela just came out of prison. He became the president of South Africa and recognized the fact that towards the liberation of the South African state, there were so many people that were involved in that fight. And those people include the white, the black, the lesbian, the gay, the bisexual, the transgender, and everybody from all walks of life. And that is why South Africa is known as a rainbow country. Now, Obasanjo, in conjunction with Ojo Madueke, who is now Nigeria ambassador in Canada, who was then the Attorney General of the Federation, came together to propose this anti-same-sex marriage. The argument was because they are trying. Excuse me. I'm speaking.
So Abati, I'm going to ask you to make a briefer point. Can you just wrap up your point?
Okay. Now, this was specifically a reaction in anticipation that at some point in history, the LGBT community in Nigeria might demand for marriage. Now, this is a group of people that do not even have any right whatsoever. We're not calling for any right. But when you look at the bill has same-sex marriage on top of it. But when you dig down, when you were doing your introduction, you were talking about association. You're talking about taking away freedom of speech. You're talking about aiding and abetting. This is a complete violation of fundamental human rights as entails in the Nigerian Constitution.
All right,
it has nothing to do
I hope
with
you
marriage.
don't mind me editing you a little bit because there's so much to get in here. So you raised those points. Ruben, can you address those, please?
Well, the first point to note is that, you know, the right to same-sex marriage or same-sex relationship is not a basic right within the Nigerian Constitution or even under international law. And it cannot be defined as an absolute right. Now, if you look at that particular law, when it says you cannot associate, hold meetings, establish gay clubs and all that, it just defines the extent to which you can give expression to certain fundamental rights. That is what it says.
Oh, really? Abati, is that what you're trying to, is that what you're explaining to millions of Nigerians, that what that law says?
Same-sex, right to same-sex marriage cannot be an absolute right. Okay, within the context of the democratic reality in Nigeria. That is the import of this particular piece of legislation.
The question from Femi is, when was it that the LGBT community in Nigeria demanded for marriage that brought about this bill?
You are imagining all of this because if you go back to the
why are you putting a law in place because of something that might be
code, which is even an extant law? Section 214 says that any person who has carnal knowledge of another person against the order of nature.
Abati, what is carnal knowledge? What is its definition? What is the definition of carnal knowledge?
So
Abati, what Abati? Abati.
So, gentlemen, I'm just going to push us on a little bit because we only have so much time for this conversation.
What is it?
Bissy, I know you're asking a question to Ruben, but I know you also know the answer to that question as well. So I'm just going to move us on a little bit.
I'm sorry, Femi, yes. I think it's important that Nigerian knows.
I know, but they're not going to learn everything in this conversation between this to and fro. So, all right, so gentlemen, just give me a pause for a moment because I want to actually share something with our online audience. And this is the ripple effect from what's been happening in Nigeria with this same-sex marriage prohibition law and the reaction. Now, there's a Kenyan author, very well-known Kenyan author called Binyavanga Wanaina. Until this week, I didn't know his sexual orientation. He said what happened in Nigeria made him come out and speak out. I want to add his voice to our conversation, so have a look at this.
For like Nigeria, for example, which is of course one of the things that pushed me to get this essay done, right? When you take that set of laws in a country already that has anti-sodomy law, and you know, the word sodomy is the most Victorian word ever. Like, if you want to talk about a Victorian word, when you hear an African say sodomite, the world is supposed to shake. You understand? Of course, me, I'm just saying, what's the word for sodomite in our 42 languages? Because that word sodomite came because the most anal people in the world, Victorians, right, came and said, these Africans have many queer behaviors. They just marry 12 people. And then tomorrow they're going to worship Sijuid. Then they're just dancing aimlessly. And I'm sure in the middle of the night, they're performing sodomy.
So, that is the Kenyan writer Binyavanga Wanaina. He was moved to actually share his sexual orientation with the world and speak out because of what has been happening in Nigeria. So, Reverend, I'm just really curious about, do you mind about the reputation that this law might give Nigeria around the rest of the world? Even East Africa is looking at you and being quite surprised. Reverend?
Nigeria remains Nigeria. What the rest of the world think about us, it does not matter. What matters is we have a president that listened to the people that elected him, and he has done what they want. And now the rest of the world, or the Western world, trying to tell us what to do is wrong. Nigeria does not interfere with what they do in their countries. Let me back up a little. I was in America when Barack Obama first came up to run for president. And if you followed the story very well at that time, this is a black young man, a nobody, but he was embraced by both blacks and whites. And one thing that really drew people's attention to him was his family values. The man loved his family. If you see the way he cared for his little girls. Now let me ask a question. At one point, we were told, he said, is that if Nigerians sign this law, they will stop supporting Nigeria, which some of us say let them do. But can Barack Obama today sit down and one of his little girls go to him and said, I want to marry a girl?
Right. So, Reverend, this is a hypothetical. I mean, we are sitting in DC, but I'm not able to ask President Obama that question. But you throw it out there as a hypothetical. Let's go back to the community in the last few minutes. Gentlemen, we are going to have order. I insist we have order. And to have that order, we have to go back to Malika. Malika.
I can't say that there's a whole lot of order online. I'm looking at my tweet deck.
Let's just pretend.
There's a lot of debating going on, but it's a healthy discussion, healthy conversation. So I want to give you a little taste of both of those two sides. Don Malik tweets in, he says, as a people, our culture and traditions, beliefs and customs must and should be respected by all, especially the West, he adds in there. On the other hand, on Google Plus, one person writes in, a country gains nothing by suppressing its citizens. You know, this will continue.
You know how I love to play video, and we've been talking so much, there hasn't been much video, but I'm actually going to go back to an NTA, which is a Nigerian Television Authority program called New Dawn, and then on that program back in 2004, Bisi actually made he came out on that program. Never happened before on Nigerian television. Let's check it out.
So I mean, in a country like this, how dare you come out and say you are gay?
Now for me, it's an issue that over time has actually pushed so many people to the wall, and it's just that Nigeria we don't have statistics in this country. You find that so many young men have actually gone to the level of depression. Many have actually taken their life because people are not allowing people to actually express themselves. I would rather want to say Nigeria is a society in bondage. You know, people will not appreciate you for who you are. And I always tell people, my sexuality is just a small percentage of who I am. It's not my totality. I have so many aspects of my life, and people should please look at me in my totality and not just who I am.
All right, so that was 10 years ago. So I'm just going to ask our guests just one by one and actually just give me one closing thought. What is different in Nigeria today? Let me start with the Reverend. Anything different from that moment where Bisi came out on NTA and now in terms of how Nigeria views its homosexual community? Reverend?
Nigeria has remained the same. We don't appreciate it, we don't accept it. It is wrong, it is unnatural. Is not acceptable, and BC also should know that if we go by what he is saying, he will not be here today, because it takes a man and a woman to have a child.
All right.
So what is advocating?
Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve conversation there. So, Reverend, I'm going to leave it there because I have to get through all of our guests and we literally have minutes to go. So, Rashidi, what's the difference between that moment, 2004, when Bisi came out, and today in Nigeria? Anything changed?
I think the difference right now is that we're sending people back into the closet. The little visibility that this community have been able to record right from the time BC came out up till now is beginning to shrink. It's beginning to go down the drain, and that is not good for any democracy. We need the voices of the minority in as much as we need the voices of the majority. And, you know, I don't think this is good for our democracy.
Okay. Ruben, I don't know if you were watching that New Dawn program 10 years ago or if you ever seen that clip, but that was a pretty amazing moment where Bisi came out. What's different now in Nigerian society? More accepting, less accepting, exactly the same? How would you categorize it?
Well, the situation, as the law has indicated, is that the definition of marriage in Nigeria remains that of a legal union between a man and a woman.
Right.
Coming together as husband and wife.
I only want to hear Ruben right now. Okay.
And then secondly, it is
There's
also
no
clear
secondly,
that
Ruben. Ruben, I'm going to leave it there, literally, because I'm running out of time here. So I'm just going to say that you have now just make sure that you understand what the status of marriage is in Nigeria with that legislation. Bisi, you understand time. You understand that I have 30 seconds left. What's different now? 2004, 2014 for Nigeria. What's different?
What's different now is the fact that we now have a law in place that justify mob justice, that justify police extortion, that justify discrimination and stigmatization, which the Constitution of Nigeria 1999 is everything against.
Okay, so Bisi Alimi, Ruben Abati, Rashidi Williams, and Reverend Musa Asake. It has been a vibrant conversation. We were expecting it, we got it. Thank you very much for being part of this conversation. Let me tell you very quickly what's coming up on the next AJ stream. Does the decriminalization of prostitution make sex workers safer? We'll discuss this and how the UN got involved in that debate. Until then, we'll be online. Thanks for watching.